ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste my dear friends, this is 12th video on the teachings of Lord Kapila. This video starts with chapter 9. Topic is purifying the mind for self-realization. Text 15. Chitah khalve asya bondaya muktaye chat mano matam guneshu saktam bandaya ratam va pumsi muktaye. The stage in which the consciousness of the living entity is attracted by the three modes of material nature is called conditional life. But when that same consciousness is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in the consciousness of liberation. Purport. There is a distinction here between Krishna consciousness and Maya consciousness. Gunesu or Maya consciousness involves attachment to the three material modes of nature under which one works, sometimes in goodness and knowledge, sometimes in passion and sometimes in ignorance. These different qualitative activities with the central attachment for material enjoyment are the cause of one's conditional life. When the same chitta or consciousness is transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, or when one becomes Krishna conscious, he is on the path of liberation. Text 16. Aham mamabhi manutaihi kama lobadibhir malahe vitam yada manah shuddham adukkam a sukham saman. Translation. When one is completely cleansed of the impurities of lust and greed produced from the false identification of the body as I and bodily possession as mine, one's mind becomes purified. In that pure state, he transcends the stage of material happiness and distress. Purport. Kama and Lobha are the symptoms of material existence. Everyone always desires to possess something. It is said here that desire and greed are the products of false identification of oneself with the body. When one becomes free from this contamination, his mind and consciousness also become freed and attain their original state. Mind, consciousness, and the living entity exist whenever we speak of the living entity. This includes the mind and consciousness. The difference between conditional life and liberated life occurs when we purify the mind and the consciousness. When they are purified, one becomes transcendental to material happiness and distress. In the beginning, Lord Kapila has said that perfect yoga enables one to transcend the platform of material distress and happiness. How this can be done is explained here. One has to purify his mind and consciousness. This can be done by the Bhakti Yoga system, as explained in the Narda Pancha Ratna. Pancharatra. One's mind and senses should be purified. Tat pratvena nirmalam. One's senses must be engaged in devotional service of the Lord. That is the process. The mind must have some engagement. One cannot make the mind vacant. Of course, there are some foolish attempt to try to make the mind vacant or void, but that is not possible. The only process that will purify the mind is to engage it in Krishna. The mind must be engaged. If we engage our mind in Krishna, naturally the consciousness becomes fully purified and there is no chance that material desire and greed will enter. Our mind is our friend and our mind is our enemy. If it is cleansed, it is a friend. If it is dirty, we contact material diseases. If we keep ourselves clean, pure, we will not be contaminated. According to Vedic civilization, one has to cleanse himself externally 3 times daily, once in the morning, again at noon, and again in the evening. Those who strictly follow the Brahminical rules and regulations follow this process. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Conditional life means that the mind is covered with dirty things, and this is our disease. When we are in the lower modes of tamoguna and rajoguna, these dirty things are very prominent. One has to raise himself to the mode of sattva, goodness, by the process of sankirtana and sarvana. One has to hear Krishna Katha. Krishna is within everyone's heart. The individual soul is part and parcel of Krishna, and Krishna wants the individual soul to turn to him. Unfortunately, the conditioned soul is attached to material enjoyment, and this is the cause of his bondage to birth, death, old age, and disease. He is so foolish that he does not take into consideration that these miseries are repeated. He is like an ass that belongs to a washerman who loads him down with heavy clothes. For a few morsels of grass, the ass has to carry heavy loads all day, although not a single piece of clothing belongs to him. This is the way of the karmas. They may become big multi-millionaires, but they are just like asses working hard day and night. Regardless of how much money they may have, their stomachs can only hold so much, and they require only 6 feet of space to sleep. Nonetheless, Nonetheless, these big karmis are thinking themselves very important. They think, without me, all the members of my nation will die. Let me work day and night to the point of death. People are thinking, I belong to this family, this nation, this community. I have this duty or that duty, and so on. People do not know that these are all false designations. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore enjoins Jivera Savrupa Haya Krishnera Nityaya Dasa. Our actual position is that of eternal servants of Krishna. We are mistakenly thinking that we are servants of a family or nation, but this is due to ignorance, tamoguna. However, we can attain the platform of sattva guna by following the instructions given in Bhagavadgita. Hearing Krishna Katha, topics about Krishna, clears all the dirty things from the mind. Also, if we chant and dance, these dirty things will be wiped away. The mind is the cause of bondage and the mind is the cause of liberation. When it is dirty, it brings about bondage. In conditional life, we take birth, remain for some time, and enjoy or suffer. But really, there is no question of enjoyment, there is only suffering. When we die, we have to give up the body and then take on another body. We immediately enter the womb of another mother, stay for 9 months or so, and then come out. Then a new chapter of life begins. This is conditional life and it goes on again and again and again. In this way, we undergo the tribulations of birth, old age, disease, and death. The dogs and cats cannot understand this process, but we can understand it in human life through the Vedic literature. If we don't take advantage of these literatures, all our education is for nothing. People actually waste their time talking politics, sociology, anthropology, and so on. They read many literatures that do not glorify the Supreme Lord, Hari, and thus they waste their time. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving everyone a chance to become pious. Punne Sarvana Kirtanaha. It is not necessary to give money or bathe in the Ganges. There are many pious activities and many processes recommended in the Shastras for becoming pious. However, in Kali Yuga, people have lost all their stamina. They are so sinful that there is no question of becoming pious through all these prescribed methods. The only means is hearing about Krishna and chanting his names. Krishna has given us ears to hear and a tongue to speak. We can hear from a realized soul and thus perfect our lives. In this way, we are given a chance to purify ourselves. Unless we are purified, we cannot become devotees. Human life is meant for purification. Unfortunately, in this age, people are not interested in Krishna and they suffer through material existence, one life after another. In one life, they may be very opulent, then they don't care about the next life. They think, let me eat, drink, and be merry. This is going on all over the world, but the Shastras say that people are making mistakes in this way. Nunam pramattaha kurute vikramaha. Bhagavad chapter 5, part 5, stanza number 4. People have become mad with sense gratification and therefore they engage in all sorts of forbidden things. Karma means regulated work and vikarma means just the opposite, unlawful, forbidden activities. The word akarma means that one is not affected by the results of work. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, stanza number 9. Yajanarthat karmano netraloko yam karmo bandhana tad artham karma kaunteya mukta sangaha mamchara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. When people are in the moods of passion and ignorance, they perform vikarma. They do not care for their future lives and they are habituated to eating anything and everything just like hogs. They do not care for the shastric injunctions and they are totally irresponsible. They are just like street boys who have no education and do not care for anything. Such urchins do whatever they like for their fathers and mothers do not care for them. Life in ignorance, tamoguna, is such a careless life. People simply act unlawfully, not considering the results of their actions. They act for sense gratification and actually they take pleasure in committing sins. In Calcutta, I have seen people taking pleasure in cutting the throats of chickens and laughing when the chicken jumps and flaps about. Sometimes in Western countries, students are taken to slaughterhouse just to see how the cows are butchered. In this age, people take pleasure in committing all kinds of sins. They have no brains to see that this body is temporary and full of suffering. They are completely in the mode of darkness, just like the animals they slaughter. There may be many animals in a pasture, and if one takes an animal aside and cuts its throat, the other animals will simply stand, look, and continue eating grass. They do not realize that the next time they may be slaughtered. The people in Kali Yuga are in the same situation, but the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to give these rascals a little sense. We are saying, don't remain animals, become human beings. In the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna bhuli se jiva anadi bahirmukha ateva maya tre deya samsara dukkha. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy Maya gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. When one forgets his relationship with Krishna, he acts in a very foolish way, and Maya gives him one misery after another, it is also stated. Maya मुग्धा जिवेरा नहीं स्वतः कृष्णा ज्ञाना जिवेरा कृपया केला कृष्णा वेदा purana. The conditioned soul cannot revive his Krishna consciousness by his own effort, but out of causeless mercy, Lord Krishna compiled the Vedic literature and its supplements, the Puranas. The Vedic literature, the Vedanta, Upanishads, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and many others should be utilized if we wish to become free from the contamination of Tamoguna and Rajoguna. The whole world is revolving due to Kama and Lobha. Kama means lusty desire and Lobha means greed. People cannot have enough sex or money, and because of this, their hearts are filled with contaminations which have to be cleansed by hearing, repeating, and chanting. Human life is meant to get rid of anarthas, unwanted things. But where is the university or college where the science of purification is taught? The only institution is this Krishna Consciousness Society. Krishna is within the heart and the contaminations are also there. But Krishna will help us cleanse them. Nasta Preseva Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. We must regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam and chant Hare Krishna. These are the two processes recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Haridas Thakura was chanting 300,000 holy names a day, but we have fixed the number at 16 rounds. Nonetheless, we are so unfortunate and fallen that we cannot even perform them. We should not waste our time reading and talking nonsense, but should engage in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Our time is very valuable and we should not waste it. Chanakya Pandita has said, Ayusaha Krishna Eko Pina Lobhya Savarna Kotibhi. We may live for 100 years, but not one moment of these 100 years can be returned, not even if we are prepared to pay millions of dollars. We cannot add a moment, nor can we get a moment back. If time is money, we should just consider how much money we have lost. However, time is even more precious because it cannot be regained. Therefore, not a single moment should be lost. Human life should be utilized only for chanting and reading Vedic literatures. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is publishing many books so that people can utilize their time properly by reading them and make their lives successful. Not only should we read Srimad Bhagavatam, but we should also serve the person Bhagavata, one whose life is nothing but Srimad Bhagavatam. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. By this process we can attain the stage of Bhagavad Bhakti. But first we must get rid of all these anarthas, unwanted things. Presently we are wasting our time thinking this is my country, this is my nation, this is my body and my family and so on. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. We can vanquish all these false conceptions when we come to the platform of Sattva Guna. Then we will not be disturbed by Tamoguna or Rajoguna, nor by Kama or Lobha, lust and greed. This is the Vasudeva platform. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Lord Kapil Deva in the next verse points out that the results that follow the successful completion of this puri- purificatory process. Text 17. Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam Prakartehe Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akhanditam. All the time the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Purport. In the state of pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad-gita, the jiva or the individual soul is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun's rays are minute particles of the brilliant sun, so a living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. The individual soul and the Supreme Lord are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. Mayavada philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. That part, the jiva, is eternally a part as long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcel also exist. As long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun's rays also exist. The Jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. He is therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or individual soul is infinitesimal, although he is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. Two words in this verse are to be particularly noted. One is Nirantaram, which means non-different or of the same quality. The individual soul is also expressed here as animanam. Animanam means infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is all pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. Akhanditam means not exactly fragmented but constitutionally always infinitesimal. No one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun, but at the same time, the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity by his constitutional position is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. Self-realization means seeing one's proper identity as the infinitesimal jiva. At the present moment, we are seeing the body, but this is not our proper identity. We have no vision of the real person occupying the body. The first lesson we receive from Bhagavadgita, chapter 2, stanza number 13, informs us that the body and the owner of the body are different. When we can understand that we are not the body, that is the beginning of self-realization, and that is called the Brahma Bhuta stage. Aham Brahmasmi. I am not this material body, but spirit soul. And what are the characteristics of Jiva, the soul? First of all, he is animantam, very minute, infinitesimal. We are also Jyoti, effulgent like God, but God is Brahma Jyoti, all pervading and infinite. According to the Mayavada theory, we are the same as that Brahma Jyoti. Mayavadis give the example of a pot and the sky. Outside the pot there is sky, and within the pot there is sky. The separation is only due to the wall of the pot. When the pot is broken, the inside and outside become one. However, this example does not properly apply to the soul as it is described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, stanza number 24. Achedyo yam adahyo yam akledyo sosaya evacha Nityah Sarva Gatah Sathanur Achalayam Sanchatanah. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, all pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. The soul cannot be cut in pieces or segmented. This means that the soul is eternally, perpetually minute. We are the eternal parts and parcels of Sri Krishna, as Sri Krishna himself states in Bhagavad Gita. Mamayvamso jiva loke jiva bhutah santana. The living entity in the conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. The word Sanatana means eternal and the word Amsa means particles. God. Krishna is very great. No one is equal to him or greater than him. It is said that God is great, but we do not actually realize how great God is. He is so great that millions of universes are emanating from the pores of his body. Yasyeka nisvasita kallan अथौवलंबया जीवन्ति लोमा विलजा जगत अंडाः नाथः विष्णुर्मोहन सा इहा वास्या कला विशेषो गोविंदम आदि पुरुषम तम अहम भजामि. The Brahmas and other lords of the mundane worlds appear from the pores of the Mahavishnu and remain alive for the duration of his one exhalation. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, for Mahavishnu is a portion of his plenary portion. Millions of universes emanate from the breathing of the Mahavishnu. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives Arjuna some indication of his infinite glory, and he concludes his descriptions with the following statement. Atva bahunetana kim jnantina tavarjuna vistabhyayam idam krashtanam ekam sena sithito jagat. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. This universe, Jagat, is situated on the strength of one part of Krishna's yogic powers. In this way, we must understand the greatness of God and our own identity as minute particles. It is stated in the Puranas that the individual soul is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. If we could somehow divide the tip of a hair into 10,000 parts, we might begin to understand how the soul is invisible. Self-realization means knowing our identity as small particles. The small particle of spirit soul is within every one of us, but it is not possible to see with material eyes. There is no instrument existing in the material universe by which one can actually see the soul. Because of our inability to perceive the soul, we say it is nirakara, formless. We cannot even calculate its dimension, akara. Although we cannot calculate it, it is there nonetheless. The living entity has full form, There are small microbes and insects we can barely see, but they have an anatomy consisting of many working parts. Within a small insect, there is also the spirit soul, and that spirit soul also exists within the elephant and other big animals. When we actually realize our identity as Brahma, our life becomes successful. Presently, we are identifying with the body, but as long as we do so, we are not better than cats and dogs. Although we may have a considerable amount of scientific knowledge, conditioned souls consider the body to be the self, and because of this, the Jivas identify themselves as American, Indian, Brahmana, Kshatriya, man, woman, elephant, and so forth. Thinking in the bodily terms, people consider their wives and children to be theirs and the land of their birth to be worshipable. Thinking thus, people are willing to fight and die for their country. Presently, everyone is laboring under this delusion, but in order to understand our spiritual identity, we must find the proper guru. Realizing our identity means realizing that we are Krishna's eternal parts and parcels, that we are very minute, infinitesimal, and that we have a perpetual and eternal relationship with Krishna, just as a part has its relationship to the whole. At no time can we be as great as Krishna, although we are the same qualitatively. No one is equal to God and no one is greater than Him. If someone claims to be God, he has to prove that no one is equal to him and that no one is greater. If he can do this, he is God. This is a very simple definition. Brahma Samhita also verifies this statement. Isvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha. The word Isvara means controller and the word Pramana means supreme. We small living entities are controllers to a degree. We can control at times our family members, wives, children, and so forth. Or we can control our office, factory, country, or whatever. There are small controllers and larger controllers. If we go to Brahma, we see that he is controlling the entire universe, but he is not the supreme controller. It is stated in the Shastras that Brahma, the greatest living being within this universe, is also meditating in order to learn how to control. Tene Brahma Hridaya Ya Adi Karveya. First of all, Brahma learned to control the universe, then he became qualified as Brahma. Although he was born Brahma, he still had to be educated. If he was the first living being in the universe, who educated him? Sri Krishna says in Bhagavadgita, Aham Adirhi Devanam, I am the source of the demigods. The original demigods are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Lord Krishna is Vishnu, but he is the instructor of Brahma and Shiva. Therefore, it is said that Lord Krishna is the source of all the demigods. We should not foolishly claim that we are as great as the Supreme God. We should understand that we are like sparks of the original fire. The spark is also fire, but if it falls from the original flame, it will go out. One should not think that because he is qualitatively one with God, he is God. One may be an Isvara, a controller, but one cannot be Isvaraha Paramaha, the supreme controller. It is very fashionable nowadays to claim to have become Narayana God. The Mahavadis addressed one another as Narayana, and thus everyone supposedly become Narayana. In this way, we are overcrowded with Narayanas here and there. But how can everyone become Narayana? Narayana is one and the Shastras warn. Yastu Narayana Nam Devam Brahma Rudradi Devatai Samtve Neva Viksita Sa Prasandi Bhaved Dhruvam. Whoever thinks Lord Vishnu and the demigods are on the same level is to be immediately considered a rogue as far as spiritual understanding is concerned. If one compares Narayana to the demigods, he simply reveals his lack of intelligence. It is also fashionable to speak of Dridra Narayana, poor Narayana, claiming that the poor man in the street is Narayana. But what is this nonsense? Narayana is the exalted supreme personality of Godhead. Even Shankaracharya says Narayana pro Vyakat. Narayana is beyond this universe. Avyaktad Andaha Sambhava. The entire universe is a product of this Avyakta. We should not compare Narayana to anyone. What to speak of the poor man in the street, Dridra? This is all foolishness. Narayana is Lakshmipati, the husband and controller of the goddess of fortune. How then can he be Dridra? This is all due to misunderstanding. Therefore, the Shastras warn that if one thinks that the demigods are equal to Narayana, one is a Pasandi and atheist. We, we should not think that because we have become liberated, we have attained the position of Narayana. By severe austerity and penance, one may elevate himself to the position of Brahma, but this is not the position of Prabrahma. Aruhya Kachrena Param Padam Tattaha. Although one rises to the platform of Brahma, one again falls down to the material position if he neglects to worship the lotus feet of Krishna. One may rise to the Brahma effulgence, but because there is no shelter there, one will return to the material atmosphere. One may go to Brahmaloka, the highest planet in the material sky, but one's position there is temporary. However, in the Parvayoma, the spiritual sky, there are many spiritual planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. There are millions of these gigantic planets, and unless we take shelter of one of them, we will fall down again into the material atmosphere. It is not sufficient to rise to the platform of Brahma. Brahma is Sat being and a partial realization of the absolute truth. We are actually after Ananda, Sat Chit, Ananda. Chit means knowledge, and that is also partial. We must add Ananda, bliss, in order to have complete realization. If we simply fly in the sky, we can't have Ananda. We have to descend to an airport at some time or another. If we simply rise to the Brahma effulgence, we do not experience Ananda. Ananda is experienced when we enter the spiritual planets where Narayana Krishna is present. Paras Tasmat To Bhavo Nyu Vyakto Vyaktat Santanaha. We have to enter the eternal planets and associated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be happy. If we do not attain this position, we will return to the material world. And how can this position be attained? We simply have to try to understand Krishna. Why does he come? What is his business? What is his form? The purpose of this Krishna consciousness movement is to teach people how to understand Krishna. If one is fortunate in understanding him, one's life is successful. As long as we have lusty desires and greed, we cannot come to this understanding. The Bhakti Yoga process is the process of purification whereby we can become free from kama and lobha, lust and greed, and the influence of the lower gunas, tamoguna and rajoguna, ignorance and passion. As soon as we engage in devotional service, we immediately become freed from the influence of gunas. Because we are not expert in approaching the Supreme Lord, we have to follow the principles of Bhakti Yoga enunciated by the Acharyas. When a boy goes to school, he has to follow the rules and regulations, but after a while he becomes accustomed to them and does not have to be taught. In other words, he learns automatically to come to school at a certain time, take his seat and study nicely. Similarly, in this Krishna consciousness movement, we have certain rules and regulations. We must rise early in the morning for Mangala Arti, chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna daily, and execute all the functions of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, we become attached to rendering service to Krishna and we become practiced in this science. When we attain this stage, we immediately become self realized. So, at this stage, I conclude this video. Next video, number 13, will start with chapter 10 Spiritual Attachment and Material Detachment. Thank you for watching this video. Namaskar, my dear friend. Thank you.